Welcome to TechConnect. Tell your story, present your idea, champion Filipino technology ingenuity, promote a smarter, sustainable, and resilient Philippines. Find great partners, investors, and like-minded individuals who will help you and your business flourish and bring your innovations to life. Now, today, TechConnect is an online tech show and podcast organized by Multisys Technologies Corporation in collaboration with Podcast Network Asia and QBO Philippines. The objective of our good friends Multisys is to connect the tech community, promote Filipino technologies and innovators, and create an avenue for all of them to reach their goals, which include promoting their products and services to reach more clients, connect them with incubators or investors, and inspire others, showcasing Filipino technology. Now, joining us today, we have our good friends of the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, IBPAP, their Executive Director for External Affairs, Attorney Ricky Salvador, as well as QBO Innovation Hub and IdeaSpace Executive Director, Katrina Chan. So first of all, good morning to Attorney Ricky. Ricky, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you, RJ, and glad to be here. Good to be spreading this good news about the IT BPO industry. We are the umbrella organization of six subsectors. These are the animation, the game developers, the Health Information Management Association, the Global In-House Centers, the software industry, and of course, the biggest, the Contact Center Association of the Philippines. So we are the umbrella, and the biggest. We have about 315 members and growing. And the universe is about 1,300 IT BPO companies currently operating in the Philippines. So we are supporting that ecosystem, and we are trying to attract more companies to set up in the Philippines. So glad to be here.
Thanks so much, and hopefully more SME companies, which is basically what Prosperna is helping, and also what Prosperna is. Become a part of IBPAP. Now, this time with our executive director, Ms. Kat Chan. Now, Kat, for those who might not just know how QBO works, like we know that QBO is really sort of like the same. It's playing off the name Bahay Kubo, QBO. No, what exactly does QBO do for SMEs and tech startups?
Hi, RJ. Again, glad to be here on TechConnect. So basically, as the name implies, like the Bahay Kubo or Kubo is really all about, collaboration and building up the tech startup ecosystem in the Philippines. So, it takes a village to raise a child kind of mentality, right? So, we see our work as kind of spanning across three main pillars. The first is to grow the ecosystem, to encourage more of our talents to kind of participate in the entire tech startup community through various capacity building events and other activities, engaging with the young and old people from around the country. The second pillar is to develop our startup founders and the businesses that they're already working on. So Dennis and Prosperna is actually one of the over 500 startups that are now part of the Kubo community. And last but not the least is, again, putting the pieces together in the ecosystem. So it's collaborating with organizations, with corporates, with government, the different verticals or facets that play into helping a small business, innovate and thrive and actually scale up. So, it's, again, putting all of these pieces together. It's bayanihan, it's teamwork, and that's what Kubo is all about.
That's right. Attorney Ricky was telling us earlier on that health and gaming have been improved, have been the bright spots for the IBPAP or the business, the BPO industry. What have been the bright spots in terms of the companies that have been growing tremendously as a result of this pandemic?
E-commerce is definitely the shining star for sure. And of course, the sort of the iron triangle, so to speak. So logistics, e-commerce, and payments. And then, of course, I think as we're all experiencing now, digital media and also communication and all of these things around that. One facet of which is also health and telemedicine, right? Is also definitely a bright spot. So again, almost all sectors have experienced massive disruption, and to the extent that technology enables these businesses or these other industries to continue to prosper. I think that's the key, right? To finding, a business that not just can kind of weather, quote unquote, the pandemic, but actually thrive even post-pandemic. So
Well,
there's some behaviors that we're seeing that are
mhm.
definitely shifting, and we expect that a lot of these things will continue to, some of these changes, right, will continue to be present even after maybe the immediate shocks, hopefully soon, of the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, thanks so much, Scott. What the perfect way to introduce our highlighted speaker and startup here on TechConnect. No? We have our featured innovator today, Prosperna, which is the leading online store, website builder, and CRM platform, which is dedicated to helping SMEs grow their business, particularly amidst this pandemic. So Prosperna has been actually a very great of great help to many SMEs that I know in growing their businesses and having to survive and thrive amidst this new normal. Now, Prosperna's mission is to empower 100,000 SMEs in the Philippines with easy-to-use and affordable e-commerce software. And of course, representing Prosperna, part of the Iron Triangle here in the Philippines, is the CEO and founder himself, Dennis Velasco. Welcome to Dennis. Dennis, how are you doing?
Hey, RJ, great, thanks, and appreciate the TechConnect community for having us, and it's always great to see Kat and Ricky. Hopefully we'll all get a chance to see each other soon, and I just want to commend you and everybody for really being out there to continue to really encourage people and share your lessons learned, especially in these times, so all is good.
Well, thanks, Dennis, for joining us. And for everybody else, I just want to inspire you by Dennis's story. I would call Dennis somebody who is a reverse balikbayan because Dennis Velasco's background includes 12 years of Silicon Valley executive leadership experience, and he moved recently to the Philippines to help raise the bar of the local tech industry. While he was in Silicon Valley, he grew a $60 million division for Salesforce.com and started two divisions for and was part of the IPO with Cornerstone On Demand. Prior to leaving the San Francisco Bay Area for Manila, he was the North American Vice President of Sales for Xero Small Business Cloud Accounting Software. And he brings all that expertise over here to the Philippines. So from Silicon Valley all the way to Sinigang Valley, thanks so much for being part of our local ecosystem. And of course, bringing our ecosystem to the rest of the world. Thanks so much, Dennis. Now, let's start off with TechConnect. Now, Dennis, I know that we've been around, we've met each other. I've interviewed you for my own show called Bright Ideas on One News Philippines, and you've also appeared in various shows where you've pitched and you've gotten some investor money. So I know that you're already connected right now here to the industry, basically to QBO and to IBPAP. So as being part of TechConnect, what's really your objective? How do you plan to further help Prosperna grow or connect?
Yeah, good question, RJ. I think, it's been, can you believe it? It's been what, 18 months or so since the world has really changed. And, that's a long time coming, right? And I think, in this particular moment, I think the theme for Prosperna and the Philippine MSME community is really about, creating a business that is more sustainable and able to withstand any kind of situation, whether it's a good situation or a not so good situation. And, with that, I think, technology has been proven to help a lot of companies do that. So in this day and age, we're just trying to help people become aware of how technology can do that, especially here in our country, right? So yeah, it's been fun so far. Certainly not easy, but the signs are really good for our country, and I think that's what everybody has to look forward to.
Now, Dennis, earlier on, I talked about you coming from Silicon Valley to Sinigang Valley. You're sort of like the reverse American dream in the sense that I believe were you born in the States or did you grow up in the States?
Interesting, yeah. So no, actually, I was born here in the Philippines, but my parents were living in the U.S. at that time. And just in Filipino culture way, my mom and dad's support system was here in the Philippines. So they actually came back to the Philippines, for the first 6 months that I was, here on Earth. And then once I was, I guess, in a stable condition, then, my parents went back to the U.S., because, they were basically there on their own. In fact, starting and running their own small businesses. Yeah. And What when I look back at and hopefully everybody here, has some belief in a bigger purpose, and I think that's really what's also really important for everybody in the Prosper Nation community, because I had this opportunity to travel with my mom on her business, and that always meant coming back to the Philippines, and that's when I first fell in love with our culture. Clearly the things that makes the Philippines great, which is our very family oriented culture. But at the same time, if you fast forward and I fell into the industry of technology, I was always that guy trying to encourage and push my parents to, hey, try new things. And, that's where I came up with that dream to one day, come back to our country and really share what I've seen firsthand on what technology can do for other SMEs. And so I'm just really lucky to be able to share that with everybody, because I think it's a great opportunity and it's great timing for our country.
Well, thanks for sharing with that, Dennis. I think many people will be inspired by your story. Hopefully you inspire more Filipino Americans to come back here and live the reverse American dream of bringing what they've learned from the US in terms of technologies and in terms of processes and services here to the Philippines, just like people like Paul Rivera of Caliber and of course Roland Ross of Kumu. Now, having said all this one, we're looking at your background here right now. You were in Salesforce, you were in Zero, so you get a lot of e-commerce background, and you came to the Philippines. You moved back to the Philippines, and of course, I'm sure that you saw that there were a lot of gaps in the e-commerce industry over here. What particular problem was Prosperna trying to solve when you initially developed it here in the Philippines, and being informed, of course, by your experience working in Silicon Valley?
Yeah. So what I saw was the Philippines had many things that started to surface that could potentially make up of a very good future potential in growing an MSME through multiple channels. What were some of those things that we saw? Well, it's interesting because I'm not sure if you guys, knew this. Example, they started here in the Philippines in 2012, right? That's actually, it's been around for some time. And marketplaces are a good leading indicator and driver to new behaviors and change, right? Whether we like it or not, right? Look at what Facebook has done. And it's kind of changed everybody's life and without us even knowing it, right? And so we also saw some things like, we have a very young population of average age of 25, right? And then of course, I'm sure Kat and the others would everybody knows, right? The Philippines is made up of 99% of MSMEs. One of the gaps that we saw, RJ, is MSMEs here in the Philippines had limited options, right? Because if you were trying to get into e-commerce, you would have to really look at solutions from abroad. Mm-hmm. But the same reason why we have Jollibee versus McDonald's, right, is because people like a local flavor, right? People like a local support, right? And that trend is really because it's what the consumer wants. And you could almost take that same example and put it in technology or any other kind of service or product. And you can see, well, what is it that your customer wants? And do they deserve, right, a local provider to address their specific needs and give them the top priority in service and support? And we are certainly a believer in, being successful by leading with a customer first mindset. And even without technology, RJ, I mean, you can simply beat bigger companies just by making your customers happier, right? And so by moving to the Philippines, creating a solution that just is built for our country, I think the customers in the MSME market, are continuing to luckily vote with their wallet and say, hey, thanks, Prosperna. So we are looking forward to continuing that.
So great. It's really creating that sort of a customized with a Filipino flavor, understanding really, I mean, it's not just so much the technology per se, but it's an understanding of the local customer journey of the MSME and putting that into the Prosperna system.
Yeah, and Kat and Ricky, I'm curious what y'all's opinions are, because a lot of times when people think of startup or a new business, sometimes we start to think really too fancy, in my opinion. And RJ, as you said, you can take that approach, right? And anybody in any industry can say, hey, if I do things more specific for my customer, I have a higher chance of success. Well, I'm sorry to oversimplify it, but that's the good news. It doesn't have to be that complicated to be successful.
I know that Dave Almirol, our partner for Multisys, couldn't be here right now. But this is really interesting thing about what Dave has been able to do. If you don't mind me also telling a bit about his own story. Since a lot of businesses were actually affected by this pandemic, what Multisys kind of did was they looked at their crystal ball and said, how can they help e-commerce continue to flourish here in the Philippines? So as such, what they released on Multisys was what you call a multi-store solution. And their multi-store solution, which they have, it comprises different platforms to solve problems also of MSMEs. They have one called Delivery Box, which sort of aggregates all the delivery people, makes it easier for them. Paybox, which aggregates all the different payment solutions, and Starbucks, which helps also aggregate different small industries. So sort of like an end-to-end online shopping, e-grocery, and cloud kitchen system, which already incorporates door-to-door delivery services and e-payment features. You can pick and choose which one you want, and hopefully they get to work a bit more together with Prosperna, and of course together with the people in QBO to help further develop what Dennis was calling a resilient and sustainable ecosystem. Now moving back, Dennis, to you, I hope you don't mind. No? Again, we look at e-commerce here in the Philippines, and many people are saying, "Oh, I can solve the e-commerce problem. You just do this, you just do that." I know it sort of oversimplifies things, but really, what made your Prosperna solution unique and innovative? What is sort of like the secret sauce that makes it stand out from other e-commerce solutions? I guess it's always very informative for many people getting into the business or getting into tech startup in the first place. I mean, what problem are they really trying to solve, and what makes it unique? The way that you solve it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have probably heard that saying amongst our friends and family, na hindi ako techie, right? Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we're trying to solve. How do we make e-commerce easy and accessible for everyone? Because it's not just the Philippines that is going through this massive acceleration to e-commerce, right? So if you go out and try to do it yourself, e-commerce is really not going to become, more affordable, right? Because the demand for software developers is really going up, and that's a good news, right? If the Philippines upskills, right, then we become the knowledge economy, and everybody knows the knowledge economy pays more than the hand economy, right? So that's a good thing, right? So what we're trying to do is make it simple so that someone can, without having any technical or developer skills, have and create their own online store, immediately get access to multiple forms of payment and multiple forms of shipping, so that they can just get started and do what they do best, which is working with their customers, developing their brand, and get back to business, right?
And tell us a bit more about how you, what I'm curious also is, but many people don't see, I mean, hindi ako techie, right? That's what you were saying. How were you able to create that sort of, how did you do the customer experience journey? How did you iterate and start developing your MVP here in the Philippines? I mean, I'm sure many people want to figure out how you went about that one.
Yeah, so to be upfront with you, this kind of software has tons of features. And, for anybody that goes through the QBO program, you'll probably learn a lot about, the lean and agile startup approach, where you really have to start small, move fast, and rapidly, adopt and build, and then build and launch and build and do that fast. So when we, the journey for us, started off with a few features, and then literally, we just hustled every week. And it's amazing. And I have to give a lot of credit to our team. Our team last year, March before the lockdown, we were 12 employees, and now we're nearing 45 at least. And it takes people to build this software. We all kind of get enamored, and we see Airbnb, we see Facebook, you see Netflix, and you think this stuff just happens out of thin air. You really have to start small and solve the problem of the customer right in front of you. That's number one. And then you solve it. And then guess what? Customer number two is going to need those solutions and then some. And then you build that and then some, right? And you just keep hustling every week until all of a sudden, man, in 12, 14 months, things start to get easier because you've built solutions that if you run your product roadmap correctly, then that can serve the needs of many, many companies. So now the MSME community benefits because they don't have to build everything from scratch.
That's right.
Right? There's no reason for them to just go out and build this stuff from scratch. I mean, a shopping cart, checkout, shipping, this stuff, isn't rocket science. It's just that somebody needs to do it to serve our country. And that's where I think Prosperna comes in.
Yeah, you're looking more like a hustler now than ever before, Dennis. Having said that, you mentioned a bit about QBO, how QBO can actually help these companies by helping them, giving them the agile framework to grow their business quickly. God, for many of the people listening here right now, I mean, beginning tech startups or just people who are out there trying to get their ideas into place, how exactly does QBO help them, I guess, start off their companies?
Again, it really depends on where you are in your journey. I think one thing that we always say is that there's a place again for everyone in the community, and that there, you don't have to be like a college dropout in a hoodie with like, a certain look to start a tech startup. The most important thing is that you have, that there's a problem that you want to solve and you feel passionate about and you're willing to lose sleep over, right? Or, put time and passion into. And, I think that's the first place to start. It's having that problem, it's having that desire and that passion. And what we do at QBO is we complement that, or, kind of put things around it, right? That building that ecosystem around it so that you can kind of transform that energy and that passion and that desire to solve a problem into actual products that you can launch. And then, once you've built these products, as Dennis was mentioning, that, it is this journey of like constantly having to test it, of having to bring it to your customers. And in that process, the other things that we can bring in would be, of course, the connections that you need, maybe funding to be able to sustain that business as it's growing, and really, networks and other kinds of mentorship, right, to help this company, this idea, this passion turn into, as Dennis said, maybe it feels like a long time, but before you know it, like 12, 18 months, hey, you have a startup, you have a company that's actually growing and making revenues and has customers and is creating an impact. So it is a process. There are a number of programs. We probably conduct 100 or so programs of some sort in a year, like from as small as a one-to-one kind of mentoring session, all the way to Philippine Startup Week, which is like 10,000 startup people networking and kind of creating some kind of critical density mass thing, right? So there's a whole spectrum of services in between, but it's not a one day you wake up and it's a startup. It's actually it's a continuing process of growing, of testing, of building, and that's really where we and our community comes to play a role.
And recently, I just read a post by the good people of Acquire, really, where they mentioned how it was through QBO that they were able to find a lot of the connections and the investors that they needed to be able to come where they are right now, and they're handling a lot of the payments for big companies like SMDC and other big real estate players in the country. So again, thanks so much, QBO. Having said that,
and it's really at every stage, like they're members in the community that are just starting out in their ideas, and you have companies that are already kind of picking up and paying it forward. So it's really a fantastic community to be part of, and I'm very proud of the Filipino tech community, and even things like this, like TechConnect, right, where everyone just gets together.
Yeah, you're the head of Bayanihan Services. Thanks so much, Kat. Ricky, Sorry, attorney. Speaking of all these things, no, we were talking about how how the ecosystem environment really that CAT provides is very crucial, I guess, in getting things going. So my guess is that once the momentum is established, once they're pretty much a set company, and then they participate in IBPAP, what will they get from participating in an IBPAP that will help them further, I guess, grow the company?
Right. So number one is we connect them with the government contacts that they need. So we are very heavy on that. And then the other members are very much willing to help each other. So it's a community. We're also trying to build that community. We have a lot of engaged members. The bigger companies trying to help the smaller companies and vice versa. So well, one thing that we see right now is the small companies are very agile. They sort of, as to Dennis's point, no, they see the customer journey more clear, I guess, clearly, and they're able to adapt quickly. So the agility and the innovation sets in. So I think that's something that the bigger companies can learn from the smaller companies, and so there's a good exchange, no. So that's what we're trying to do within IBPAP. We're trying to connect them, and we're trying to open up other companies to look at other sectors as well. So you have the contact centers looking at the health information sector, or even looking at what the global in-house centers are doing, or what services they lack, or that take that opportunity to pitch in. So these are some things that we are trying to cultivate within IBPAP.
Fantastic. If you don't mind, I'll just tell a little story myself. No, we're like working get together with Multisys, where it's a big company working with an MSME. And 10 years ago, Multisys was actually an MSME until finally MVP came in and invested 45% of the company at 2 billion pesos. But at that time, Multisys was already a big company. My company, which is Mercato Central, I'm sure many of you, some of you are familiar with it. We are an outdoor food market, but we're really a small food business incubator. We work together with Multisys to develop a how do we digitize? How do we turn this outdoor food market and what it does as a small food incubator? How do we bring that online? And we're actually working together to develop a Mercato app, which uses the service of its multi-store, where there's a delivery box, where there's a pay box, where there's a store box. And we're looking forward actually to working together with people like Prosperna to grow the ecosystem and grow the app at the same time. So that's really, I think, the benefit of just being part of that ecosystem and knowing people and connecting to people and being able to understand. Sometimes there's a solution that's out there. You don't have to worry about it because people already have that solution for you, but they're actually looking for you because they need somebody to use that solution for them and for that solution to make sense. Now, I know that we don't have much time left. This has been such a great discussion. But here's one more big point that people really ask when it comes to TechConnect, and that's the issue of funding. Now, I hope you don't mind, Dennis, we're going to go back to you again. Prosperna people, the big question people often have is that, okay, we're bootstrapping. And bootstrapping basically means that Dennis is pulling out of his own pocketbook or from his own ATM the money to finance the development of the company. And of course, that's really the story of many entrepreneurs when they begin. And then from there, where do you go from there? Do you get investments? I mean, people go seed round, people go Series A. Do you get a good angel investors? Tell us a bit more about your process, Dennis, and maybe Kat, you can reflect as well on what's happening there, and Enrique, you can add your 2 cents. But tell us a bit more about your funding journey, if you don't mind, Dennis, because I think that's a big story for many of our smaller tech entrepreneurs who are trying to get their business going.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do what we can to share some lessons there. So first, I love the word bootstrapping. I think, honestly, bootstrapping is the best thing for any startup or small business. And you should probably go as far as you can until money stands in the way of you growing your business. And I would say that if you also bootstrap for longer, then you'll really be in a better position to get the right partners, right? And if you don't mind me saying, under the right, reasonable and fair and mutual terms for your ecosystem of your business. So is it hard? It is harder to do a bootstrap business, but in the end, I think it's better because also think about it. If you just look at it from an opposite standpoint, money comes with lots of strings attached, right? And if you get money at the wrong time, then it takes you away from focusing on your customer. And so anyway, just a couple things there. We went as far as we could, and we just felt like we were going to miss out on opportunities, or we could accelerate faster if we got the right investment partners. So, Kat, I'm curious. I mean, you see, startups every day. What's your opinion?
Absolutely. I actually really agree with a lot of what you said, right? So the first thing is, I think the fundraising conversation is the sexy one. Like that's what everyone wants to talk to me about. Like, hey, where do I get investors? How do I get a VC, right? Like I want to do series XYZ. And it's when the business is right and if the business is good, that should be the focus of the entrepreneur because the money will come. Like people will be competing for your rounds and throwing money at you. I mean, that's an exaggeration, right? But basically you'll get term sheets left and right, but your focus as the entrepreneur is to build the business. And I think a lot of people forget that equity is probably the most expensive form of capital you can give away. It doesn't seem like it, it's not worth much to you maybe in the beginning, but if you really believe that this is a company that you can scale up and grow to a unicorn kind of status, right? Then that early equity that you gave away too early, that's going to cost you, and it's actually potentially going to harm your cap table, right? Like the overall profile of the investability of your business, I guess is one way to think about it in the long term. So I absolutely agree with Dennis. Bootstrap as long as you can until it becomes a real impediment to your growth. Right? And what does that mean? It means that the only reason you're not growing right now is because of money, right? Or if I only added more fuel to this car that's already working and running, then it will run. And that's probably the better test. And not to say that there aren't serious kind of funding issues still and disparity. Like, I can talk about, for example, Startup Pinay, which I feel very strongly about. Like there's still huge gaps with certain types of entrepreneurs, maybe unlike Dennis with a great Silicon Valley kind of background, right? And other kind of, and there's still definitely a lot of like great ideas and businesses out there that could definitely need the support and the funding. But so I don't want to discount that, but overall, I will say that funding should not be your biggest concern, especially when you're starting a business. It should be building the startup that you should focus on first as entrepreneur, and then the funding will come if you're solving a big enough problem and you're making taking the right steps.
So
And very last point, the choice of investor is so important. Again, whenever you get an investor, it's like worse than a marriage, right? They're really a true partner. They're part of your business. They co-own your business. So and thinking about the value that an investor brings apart from money, like the strategic, the advice, the network, all of these things, like the vision fit of the investor with what you're trying to do as an entrepreneur. These are things that, don't take it for granted, take it very seriously. I think from all the deals I've seen, these are just kind of stuff that I want to share.
Great practical tips for the people listening to us here right now. Attorney Richie, I have in mind, maybe you can wear your legal mind and your what sort of legal and regulatory framework and things that you've come across as well in your own profession, both when you were in your previous job and here at IBPAP, that startup should be aware of also when growing their business. Also from there's a finance, there's a legal, there's different perspectives, but sometimes things get lost along the way. What do you want to keep in mind?
Well, I guess my best advice would be consult the experts, and just concentrate on your business. So if you have you want to start a company, leave that to your corporate lawyer. Hire someone, engage someone, so that that part of your business can be taken care of quickly, and just concentrate again to what Dennis's point earlier was. concentrate on serving your customer, I guess, is the best advice. And at the same time, I just wanted to weigh in, add to what Kat said. IBPAP actually promotes non-members. No, we
Mhm.
feature non-members in an event called Beyond Boundaries. So this will probably tie in with how can we help in funding. Probably if we feature the right SME or the right startup, they get to address the membership, and the idea is picked up by a member, then they can probably collaborate with each other. So I guess for IBPAP, it's really just setting that environment of collaboration and cooperation among the ecosystem.
Well, thanks so much, Attorney Ricky. We've come to the point where we've come to the point where we've got to wrap up this discussion. It's been very insightful, I guess, for all of us. And I'm sure there's a lot more to share. And if you do, I'm sure you can get in a conversation together with either Dennis or Kat or Attorney Ricky. But having said all this one, and in your, I guess, roller coaster journey over the past year and a half because of this pandemic, Dennis, if you were to distill some of the life and business lessons that you gained from all this one into two or three, bullet points, what would they be? What would you like to share with your fellow tech startups out there who want to be the next Prosperna?
Yeah, sure. Whether you're a tech startup or, a non-tech, but MSME, I think for us, and what I think would help a lot of companies out there is just to, keep things simple. I think right now, and under normal circumstances, people, are always encouraged to dream big, and et cetera. And that's great. But if you really want to be successful, you actually have to start small. And again, going back to focus on the customer, start small. Otherwise, you make your path a bigger mountain to climb. And because there's always tomorrow, right? The second thing is be consistent, right? Customers, you have to, for your customers, again, you have to be there day in, day out. You can't just try digital marketing and then disappear.
Mhm.
You can't just try anything in life and then, oh, what happened? Akala ko you're doing this or doing that, right? I think any business owner would probably look back and say, consistency in through the thick and thin is what customers will see, because everybody at some point will need a friend, whether that's in the e-commerce business, or fill in the blank of whatever your product and service is. So those two things to me, I think, are just in itself really key ingredients. I know they work for us, and I wish nothing for the best for our country and our community of MSMEs. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Dennis. Keep it simple. I guess a very important thing is in this overly complex situation right now, keep it simple is the best advice to get their startups off the ground. Attorney Ricky, would you like to add to that one as well? What are your tips, I guess, for these emerging companies and some even established companies who just might, are still not getting used to what's happening in this pandemic?
Well, I guess IBPAP is here as a platform. No? They can always approach us. We can always find ways to help them. One thing I learned jumping from the FMCG to the IT business process outsourcing industry is that this is a very collaborative ecosystem. No? Unlike the infant formula business where it's a dog eat dog business, here everyone wants to help each other. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I decided to join this industry, is because it's such it's a welcome. Because look at it this way, look at it from the macro point of view. We are competing against other nations, the likes of Colombia, the likes of Malaysia, and of course India is our biggest competitor. And it sort of brings some sort of Filipino pride, no? Coming from the Olympic queen of Heidelin, you want to be the best, right? And this is a place where you can be the best. So definitely, if you have an idea, we would like to hear from you. Approach us, send me an email, and we'll hook you up with whatever support you need.
Thanks
All
so
for
much,
Filipino, of the
Thanks so
Filipino
much.
pride.
Thanks so much, Attorney Ricky, our Olympian there at the IBPAP. Maraming salamat. And of course, finally, Kat, let's leave the best for last. Our only rose among thorns over here. What do you think? What are your tips? Like I said, I've had you on my show. We've talked about how you've seen what have been successful and not successful for many of these startups and tech companies. But what's your own advice for them as well? People who are on the journey.
Yeah, so I think this is a bit similar to the advice I shared. And I mean, just to echo some of the points already shared by my colleagues, the first thing is, just start. You have to try things and you have to start doing them. Like, and the sooner you do that and not think about it, not just keep thinking about it instead of doing something about it, I think the better off you'll be. I've heard this kind of advice where it's something like, be like a cockroach, like survive long enough. And if you keep doing something long enough, like, you're going to hit it, right? But the only way that you'll ever get there is to actually just start and give it a try. So it's probably my first tip to anyone at any point in your journey, right? Like, just keep trying, keep going at it. Second is, to Attorney Ricky's point, the whole, and also a big part of our thesis, right? The bayanihan kind of collaboration thing. It's not just a word that I like to say, because I truly believe that that's a strength of the Philippine ecosystem, is our relationships, our networks, our, the force in being able to work together and build something bigger and better because of it. And I think that translates both to, I guess, tech infrastructure, if you can think of Prosperna as that, like it's a tool that will help you, or so, don't be afraid to kind of use and reach out to and take advantage of all of these tools and services that can support what you're trying to do, so you can focus on you be you, right? But apart from that, there's also the people side of it, the organizations, the soft infra, right? So organizations like IBPAP, like QBO, even like Multisys that are there. So, if you're starting out, don't kind of just go at it alone and again be the guy in the hoodie, embrace the bayanihan spirit, and work with others, and you'll go so much farther working together than trying to go at it alone. So
I love that. Embrace the pioneer spirit and the epis mentality, the cockroach mentality. Really, really great tips I'm picking from all of you. Again, thank you so much to all of you for joining us here on TechConnect. Of course, maraming salamat ulit to IBPAP Executive Director Atty. Ricky Salvador. Thank you so much to QBO Executive Director Kat Chen, and of course the CEO and founder of Prosperna, Dennis Velasco. And he couldn't be here, but he's here with us in spirit, Mr. David Almirol of Multisys Development Corporation. Again, thanks so much. This has been RJ Ledesma for TechConnect. See you in our next podcast.